one, and here. Hello, comic book fans. Pete here from Comic Books Transformed, where we talk about all the adaptations of your favorite comic books, whether it is in a streaming show or a movie. In today's show, we are talking about Doom Patrol, which is a favorite for me and my co-host over there, Brian. Brian, Doom Patrol episode 3. You're excited, aren't you?
Yeah, I'm excited. Yes, we should also mention we're also talking about fourth episode of Willow today too, just in case someone's not interested in Doom Patrol, but maybe you should be.
Yes. You know, the thing is, right, it's kind of funny. I was thinking about Mr. Sunday, which is one of my favorite YouTube channels and a channel that inspired this one. I don't think they've ever covered Doom Patrol, ever, in all the 4 seasons.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I'm sure they're not going to start now, because everything at DC seems to be ending.
Yes.
Hashtag fire James Gunn.
I just saw that this morning. Yeah.
Yeah, I've been reading them just out of curiosity to see what people are saying. Like, is it bots again or what?
Yeah.
I don't want to fire James Gunn. I'm a little bummed about Henry Cavill, but I don't want to fire James Gunn. I'm curious to see what he does.
Yeah, I wonder if, like, syllabically fire James Gunn. It's too early in the morning, but if syllabically fire James Gunn the same amount of syllables as restore the Snyder Cut. Right? It's just like, just replace one with the other, you know?
Yeah, basically.
Yeah. So anyway, regardless of how people feel about DC properties, we are big fans of Doom Patrol. And looking at the notes right here, the episode 3 of season 4 is called Nostalgia Patrol. And we have this whole little side arc with Cyborg. Now, did you like that side arc?
Yeah, it was. I did. I am actually enjoying the growth of Cyborg as a character here without his tech. I don't know if that's happened in the comics. Actually, I imagine it has to have happened at some point where he was like restored to a more human form and he had less things to rely on. But I oddly think he fits in so much better in this cast like this than before. So, they often will have these characters kind of go off on their own little side stories that aren't, they're very self-contained in the sense of their character arcs where they don't really touch on anybody else's stories. I didn't mind this at all. It's just he went back to his hometown, Detroit, met up with some old friends. They were kind of like in a robotics club together. They had these grand plans to just improve the lives of people in Detroit, in the inner city and all that. And it seems like after Cyborg's accident, he abandoned them, and they didn't really take too kindly with it. It was interesting for them to kind of go back and forth with kind of guilting him and revealing a little bit more about what happened. It is a little strange that like they talk about they were the pallbearers at his mother's funeral, and then like he just never talked to them ever again after it, which like Cyborg never seemed angry before to me.
Right.
Like that seems like the actions of someone who's like angry and disappointed in life. I mean, I guess he is sort of disappointed, but I never got that feeling from the character prior. Like he seemed like he wanted to do good with his life, and while he definitely seemed ostracized at points, it just doesn't seem like that's something he would have did. This version of the character would have did.
Yeah. I mean, we were talking about Zack Snyder's cut a couple of minutes ago. In the Zack Snyder Justice League, that version of Cyborg seems like he would be the type that would do that.
Yes. Agreed. Yeah.
There's so many different interpretations of the character, whether it's like Teen Titans or Teen Titans Go, and then there's the Snyder Cut, and then there's this. And what's always funny about this is that you said this last episode that Cyborg was never part of the Doom Patrol in the comics, and in here he's a major part of the show, a major part of the team, and he's treated like this, like, Cyborg is this rock star superhero, and he's with this team of weirdos. But it's funny because he was never on the Doom Patrol to begin with. And they kind of treat him like he's this amazing character, I think, because he has been on the Justice League so much since, like, the New 52.
Yeah.
And so he kind of... go ahead.
No, I was always curious as to why Cyborg ended up on this show when we also have Titans going on. Like, it doesn't make sense to me. And also the fact that when the show started, that the Justice League movie was prominent, or was being filmed or released, so he was on that too. So like comics, they're pushing Cyborg into the Justice League away from the Teen Titans, but here they have a Titan show, they have a Doom Patrol show, and they decided to put him on this show, which is weird. But I think this might be the most I've enjoyed Cyborg on this show so far.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Yeah. They like draw very, very heavily from the Grant Morrison run. And I know that there was this African American character that was on the team then who kind of fills in the role that Cyborg has now on the show. And I'm wondering if they were like, well, this guy's on the team, he's in a bunch of issues, but people aren't going to recognize him at all. Like they're always going to recognize Robot Man and Elastigirl and Negative Man. Right. So like maybe if we just change this guy for Cyborg. I know that sounds kind of cynical, but also there's a lot of cynical decisions that go into making a TV show. So like maybe that's what they did.
Yeah. But then again, I mean, like, creating a show like this, who is it for? Like, you're saying that they added Cyborg in there as a name somebody might recognize? Like, I don't think many people that even watch these DC shows would have known any of those other characters at all. Like, they are fairly obscure. I mean, comic book fans definitely know Grant Morrison. They definitely know of Doom Patrol. Maybe they haven't read it, but, I think that the average, like, CW show watcher would not have known about any of those characters outside of Cyborg.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because, like, as I was making that point, I was like, okay, wait a minute, what are their code names? Like, I know it's like Cliff, Rita, and Larry, but I'm like, Robot Man, like Negative Man, right?
Yeah. I mean, they sort of joked about the code names last episode or the first episode too. So
yeah, I'm still chuckling about what she calls, Madame Rouge, like Shitbird Can or something. I don't know what the fuck her name was, something like that. Yeah, good stuff. So this episode is much, much, much more about Rita, and Rita's kind of been MIA for the most part in the last 2 episodes. This one involves Dr. Janus, and so you also have Mr. 104, who's played by Sendhil Ramha. Rama Murthy.
God, I wrote it down. I can't remember. He was Mohinder from Heroes. That's what the point I'm trying to get across.
Yes. And honestly, I mean, because you put this in the notes and stuff, but like, I was very confused about that whole sequence watching it. So, like, do you recognize Dr. Janus from the comics at all?
No, she apparently was a minor villain, and that there seemed. I mean, I assume that they're having her be part of the Brotherhood of Evil here. Her goal is to resurrect Immortus. I don't know exactly what was taken. Something about the emotions of Rita that she went through for re-experiencing all of her films. And then Dr. Janus shows up, basically says 2 lines, and then disappears with the amulet with that purple stuff in it. And yeah, that's kind of it.
Yeah. I mean, it definitely seemed that they were looking for a specific type of emotion, right? Like, it's like they wanted a specific, like, it wasn't just like, oh, we just need emotions, because she has the amulet on and she experiences different emotions. It's that, like, she's looking for a specific type of emotion.
Yeah, but I couldn't quite figure out what it was.
Right.
I took away that they were looking for a few different ones in various amounts or something like that. That's what it seemed like to me, but I could be wrong.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, you might be right. Yeah. And so this is where we have this scene. Now, when we first started talking about this season of Doom Patrol, I talked about how I wasn't really a fan of Madame Rouge. I really appreciated the actress. And I think I didn't make this point last time, but I've said this before, that she's from Doctor Who as well. That's when I first saw her. And they have this thing on like Doctor Who and sometimes like these kind of hip sci-fi shows where they just sort of say goofy things just because it's like, oh, we're so whimsical, and that kind of stuff gets on my nerves when they just sort of say silly stuff that doesn't make any sense. And she even kind of said a few things like that on this show. However, this one part where Rouge is like by herself and she's essentially like kind of talking herself into being the leader of the team, I actually really liked that scene. It looks like you did too.
Yeah, I did like the scene. I mean, just the fact that they elected a team leader. The first act she takes as leader is to go on this mission to save Rita or back up Rita, and it goes wrong, and she just abandons everybody and assumes the worst automatically, and then starts drinking herself to death. Kind of like I don't know, maybe it's a Niles Calder move. I don't know.
Yeah. And the actress that plays her, Gomez is her last name. I can't remember. Is it Michelle Gomez or? Yeah. She's got like a thick Scottish accent, and I just love that, man.
Yeah.
My grandfather was Scottish. I, dealt with a lot of Scottish stuff growing up, and I just love listening to her talk. It's funny you bring up Niles Calder, and this isn't in the notes and stuff, but like sometimes I forget how big a presence Timothy Dalton had on the show. He's not in the season at all. I don't even know if she references him. She says his name a couple times in this episode, but he's just been gone for a while at this point. And he was such a major player.
Dead since season 2. He showed up as like a ghost or something, or one episode in season 3 or something like that.
Yeah.
With the zombie episode, that's right. But yeah, no, I mean, I love Timothy Dalton. He's great. I one of my favorite things he was actually in was Hot Fuzz.
Yes, Hot Fuzz. Yeah.
The villain there, I think his name was Skinner, but I think he's great, and he was a great addition to the show. But maybe maybe the story ran out from I don't know, or they couldn't pay him. Who knows?
Yeah. Did you ever watch the show Penny Dreadful?
I have not actually.
Yeah. He's on that. He's kind of almost like a vampire hunter. He's really good on that. I love that show, but that show kind of fell off the rails towards the end of the 3rd season too. But yeah, it's worth checking out if you have Showtime.
Got it. Yeah. I don't think I do,
but so Niles Calder, obviously he brought them all together, and they even kind of start to talk about like their conditions and being a team and stuff like that in this episode, especially when Rita does this speech about the team itself. They're all in this weird scenario. I was thinking about this, how like every episode kind of has the same formula. I think we've even discussed this before, but like the team just sort of gets brought into something. Like they don't always go seeking something out. Just sometimes things just show up at their friggin' house. And in this case, they go to this community theater because Rita thinks that there's going to be some kind of tribute to her. And essentially they get sucked into her movies, before her accident. And there's one movie that's kind of like a haunting of Hill House kind of movie. And then there's like a romance movie, obviously. And then she encounters that guy who he kept talking about elements and Mr. 104. That's an element on the periodic table, I think.
That's the number of elements on the periodic table.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Yes. And so, did you think that for a second there? Did you think that he was going to be Elemento?
I didn't. Because it happened, like he just kind of mentioned it almost in passing.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't really notice him talking about elements before he said it. Did he?
He said like something about elements, like I think 2 times before. Because I was I remember like hearing him and being like, wait a minute, he keeps talking about elements. Is this like Elemento? And then there's the guy on the show that, what is he? He's got like 2 heads and one of them's a dinosaur. What's he called? Well, he's like Vegetable Mineral Man or something.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, never mind. Yeah, he's not Element anything. Yeah.
That was an interesting character. He seemed like he was helping them all along, but then he was working with Dr. Janice. But then he also helps them again after Rita gives that impassioned speech, and he kind of helps them out. And then Keeg shows up, and then I guess he just kind of breaks the illusion that they were in.
Right.
But he's nowhere to be found and seems to have gone inside of Mr. 104.
Yeah. I wonder what's up with that. Yeah, the Keeg stuff. Let me ask you this: like with the Larry and the Keeg stuff, do you find that to be interesting, or do you kind of feel like I said last week, it's sort of like kind of spinning wheels?
I think the negative spirit stuff got a little interesting last season when they went to like the negative planet or whatever.
Yeah.
I am sort of interested in the Keeg talking to future Keeg thing, but ultimately, yeah, I think they've drawn out that storyline a bit too much, I guess. They need to give something for Larry to do, and that's usually his kind of side thing there. They've kind of finished with the stuff with his family. Like that's over now.
Yeah.
So, like this is what they have left, and I think maybe they've overdone it a little bit. But I don't dislike it or anything.
Yeah, it's funny because like his life, his own personal life, his own personal misery has often been like tied directly in with the plot of the show or like the overarching plot. Like his own son was in the Bureau of Normalcy, and like so much of him having to deal with like being a closeted homosexual kind of just goes along with that theme of, everyone wants you to be normal and you can't, right? Like this is who you are. And so he's kind of the shining example of how tough it can be to not fit into that cookie cutter mold. But it almost is like, how much more could they even do with his family or his own kind of failures and how he handled things? And in this episode, he does talk with Mr. 104 at first, like before the reveal at the end, and he kind of keeps referring to him as his friend. And I was like, oh, is there going to be some kind of like almost like relationship going on here? This could be kind of interesting. Did you think that at all? Or?
I did think that, yes. I did see some chemistry brewing there, and obviously I think that's going to come back in a later episode.
Yeah.
I think in terms of the argument that the idea that the negative spirit story seems stale, I think you can make that argument for almost any of the characters, honestly.
Yes.
I don't know how they've gotten 4 seasons out of the backstories of the characters that they do. Jane's feels a little fresh this season with finding a purpose because the Kay doesn't need them. That seems a little fresh. But Cliff's story is essentially the same.
Yep.
It's grown a little bit, that now that he has the feeling. That's a alteration, but it hasn't really changed very much. But I still like it. I don't know if this show can go on. How much longer this show could go on? It's probably not. Like I'm 95% sure that this show is done after the season.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure I'm not sure how much they can get from that well, the wells that they've been drawing from.
Yes. Well, that's the thing, right? I think the reason why it feels like the well's been overdrawn or it's getting dry is because this show focuses on the characters that we love so much, and that's so much of what the show is. When you look at the Gerard Way run or the Grant Morrison run, yes, they do sort of have these overarching issues that they deal with. Like Cliff has his body issues, and Rita's not really in the Grant Morrison stuff that much or at all. I don't know. But and Larry has all this weird stuff going on where he's like melded with another person and stuff. But all of their kind of personal issues are just sort of dropped like once per arc. They just kind of say something about it. Whereas there's always this kind of weird thing they're dealing with. And then like you focus so much on how weird everything is in the Grant Morrison run and the Gerard Way run. In the Gerard Way, they kind of like go on these adventures, and it's just like you have to kind of figure out what the fuck is going on with the world itself that they're in, and their personal issues are just always just kind of referenced. It's not like they're the focus like they are on this show.
Yeah, I feel like it's the opposite for the show. The personal issues are the focus, and the weird stuff's the drop every episode. Yeah.
Right. There's like an 80-20 relationship between the two, and in the comics, it's the weird stuff is the 80. In the show, it's the personal stuff is the 80.
Yeah. That's that going back to that whole relatably human aspect of TV shows. I always mention that like hardcore fans of things want all the weird stuff, the weird details, and all things like that. But for a show to be successful, you have to tap into that relatable human emotion to get a more general audience interested in it. There's not enough weirdos out there.
yeah, very true, very true. And so and just 2 more things before we wrapped up. So you talk about Jane's stuff that's in this episode too, and honestly, I was kind of confused because, like in your notes, you mentioned how Jane has that puzzle piece and she sees Shelley's eye, and I'm going to be completely transparent. I actually kind of forgot who Shelley was from.
I too.
Oh, okay. So who is that from the Sisterhood of Dada? Who's that?
I have no idea.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
Great work on the news this week, Brian.
No, so I mean, I'm just trying to think of who the Sisterhood of Data characters are. I'm assuming because she did kind of have chemistry with this one woman who almost kind of seems like Constantine. I remember in the season when we see the Sisterhood of Data, Jane.
She's the fog. She's the one that kind of has the
right. She's got blonde hair.
Like a David Bowie haircut, like
right. No, but that is a good point. No, because they kind of play her up like she's sort of this David Bowie. She acts like John Constantine, even though she's
yes. And there was a little bit of conversation between the two of them. They made with potential chemistry there.
Exactly. Yeah.
And the fog. Yeah.
Yeah, because like the very first time you see her interact with Jane, they're in like a candy store. It's when the whole team gets sucked into this, like they're in the woods and they get sucked into their realm or whatever. So okay, that makes sense that she kind of had like a little orgasm then if she saw her specific eye.
Yeah.
Well,
I mean, also the fog itself came out, so I mean, maybe it actually did something. Who knows?
Yeah. What happened to the Sisterhood of Donna last season? Do you remember?
I don't remember. No.
Yeah. It's weird. It just sort of like vanishes. It's such a bizarre show that like things don't happen the way when you try to recall something, you're like, okay, well then this would happen and this, but the show's so chaotic that it's hard to remember stuff.
Yeah, no, and like we said, like the focus is on the emotional character arcs and less about the weird stuff. So and there's so much weird stuff, and they're just kind of like dropped in, and you kind of forget about it because it's not really brought up as much. I mean, I know the Sisterhood of Dada was like a big part of last season, but still, it's like I barely remember. I remember all the stuff with Rouge betraying Rita and all that, but I don't remember the individuals of the Sisterhood and what they were trying to do and how they were even foiled. Because I mean, usually the Doom Patrol doesn't actually do anything.
Yeah,
they just kind of resolve on their own and they just kind of get out alive.
Yeah.
So it's hard to remember because no one really took an action to get them out.
Yes. Well, let's see. There once was this one YouTube clip I watched of Mandy Patinkin and his wife trying to remember an actor's name, and they just spent like 10 minutes going like, "Remember, he's in The Thing, and he does the thing," and and it actually was very entertaining, even though they're not really saying anything. And I was thinking, could we just bore the fuck out of our listeners / viewers for a second and play a game where can we at least describe the members of the Sisterhood of Dada each?
Well, I mean, now that I looked at the fog, I remember her, obviously. I remember that there was the one that was in like the glass casing.
Yes.
She was Asian.
Yes, but she had a cool power. Do you remember her cool power? She had a really cool power.
No, I don't remember.
Okay, so her power is taken directly from the Grant Morrison comics. It was a cool power. It was every superpower you could have that no one has ever thought of before.
Oh, that is very Grant Morrison, yes.
Yes. Then there's like the African American guy who has like the bikes on the
bicycle guy,
yeah, the bicycle guy, and I think he just makes wind or something. I think,
yeah, something like that.
Right. So there's him. There's the fog. There's the Asian girl that's like behind glass. There was a guy that got killed, and he had like a bird cage in his chest.
Well, no, he was from the original Sisterhood when in the 20s or when Rita went back in time and Rouge was the leader, and that was the guy that she ultimately kills.
Yes. So I mean, I think that's the whole team, unless I'm missing somebody.
I guess.
Yeah, because they were almost like 1-to-1. There was like as many Doom Patrol people as there were Sisterhood of Dada people.
Yeah, because they were all having one-on-one conversations back then. Yes, so
yeah. So I think that's all of them. I mean, this is a show where you have like the beard hunter who becomes the butt hunter, and there's sex ghosts and okay. Here's a question for you. They mentioned a testicle monster. Have we seen a testicle monster?
I don't remember either.
Yeah. That's the whole thing. I was like, wait a minute, did I like skip an episode accidentally? Did they drop 2 and I missed one? But no, I mean, they haven't. It's only these 3 episodes that we've covered so far.
Yes. Yeah, I don't remember. They mentioned it numerous times. Wait, there's a massive monster resembling. Oh, this is.
Are you looking up testicle monster on your
That was the
computer?
monster. Okay, so remember they also mentioned. Vic mentions this, that he stopped the testicle monster in the. They did something in one of the canals in South America or something like that, was blocking cargo traffic or something. That was the testicle monster. I don't know if they showed it, or is that what they went? Is that what they went in the robot to go fix?
Yep. Yeah. In the season finale. Yeah. They didn't show it. I don't think. I think they just said it. So it's like one of those things where it's like they refer to it, but you don't see it.
Yeah, I guess.
Okay. Cool. So then there's one last thing. So let's just imagine that there are people watching the show, listening to the show that like kind of know comics, but they don't really know as much about DC or the Doom Patrol. I do feel like it's important for me to kind of explain who Elemento is, because otherwise they're gonna be like, what the fuck, who is he talking about? And so Elemento is the Elemental Man, and he's a DC character, but he's like one of these weird characters where his costume, he has like 4 different colors for his costume, and he can like change his body composition to be different elements.
No, isn't that Metamorpho?
Oh fuck!
See, you said it before. I'm like, wait a minute. That is that. I don't remember that, but
Okay, yeah. But Metamorpho is the Elemental Man.
Yes, yeah. So, but you started showing the costume like that's Metamorpho.
Yes. And the thing is, right, is that like he's probably done stuff with the Doom Patrol, but I know for a fact he's done a lot of stuff with Batman. There was like this digital Batman cartoon. I think it was called Beware the Batman, and he was kind of prominent on that. He's on a team right now, I think, in DC called the Terrifics, which is like the DC version of like the Fantastic Four. And Mr. Terrific is like Mr. Fantastic, and he's kind of like the role of the Thing on that team. And he's had some weird Vertigo type books too in the past. And his stuff has become like they've made it real tragic with him and his girlfriend. But he's just another weird kind of quirky character that like nobody really knows about. But if you love DC and if you do the deep dive stuff, you get to like really love him,
Yeah, I had when I was a kid, I had a bunch of Batman and the Outsiders comics that he was always on the cover. I remember him from that.
Yeah. And didn't you also kind of collect the Outsiders with me at one point, like in the early 2000s when we would go to like Jim Hanley's?
Yeah, but unfortunately I don't have those books anymore.
Yeah, I have them like right over there. Like just for fun, since we're just bullshitting and stuff, I want to show you where my comics are in my garage. Hold on a second. Do you see my stack of comics over there?
Oh, look at that.
Yeah. So those are all my comics.
Got a newer collection here. I have one box that's about halfway full. I've been going to the store almost every week.
Oh, nice. Getting those floppies, as they call them.
Yeah. God, you know what? Most annoying thing. I just forgot this thing existed, but like was reading a book and this one of the pages just got removed from the staples. I gotta go fucking buy it again now.
That sucks. Has that ever happened to you in a trade of a comic?
Yes, unfortunately. And I rebought those too.
Yeah. I read a lot from the library, and sometimes the library trades will come apart like that, and I just feel bad. I tape them back up before I send them back. Yeah. But anyway, Doom Patrol. Did you want to say anything else about episode 3, Nostalgia Patrol?
Yeah, I mean, we kind of grazed over, but I really enjoyed Rita's speech. I thought it was really strong and powerful. They again just reference that how much the chief fucked up their lives, but the one good thing is the found family they have, which is just the recurring theme here. And we've kind of like I feel like we had like we almost sounded very negative about this episode. I don't think it was bad. I still enjoy the show, but I just wanted to correct that we sounded like a little hypercritical this week. But I still really enjoy the show, and I'm excited to watch its probably final season.
Yes. Yeah, come on. We're positive fanboys. We don't really critique stuff that much, unless it's Jupiter's Circle, or whatever the fuck it's called. But what do you call it? It's funny they mentioned the family thing, and you had it in your notes too, because like I feel like that's a go-to for almost any show, any franchise, where they have to be like, we're a family. And I think it's because like families obviously are universal. Everyone has some kind of family. So it's very easy. It's low-hanging fruit to kind of say that. However, with this group of characters, it does absolutely feel like a family after all these seasons and the way they interact with each other.
Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
you also got to consider that they've probably spent most of them have kind of spent 30+ years with each other.
Decades. Yeah, just like you and me, man.
Yeah, that's right. Shit, yeah.
Cool. Well, let's go back in time a couple of decades to when we were little boys in Staten Island and we saw the Willow movie. And did we ever predict that we were going to get an episode like Willow episode number 4, The Whispers of Nockmaar?
No, I didn't think we would ever get a continuation of it back then. I don't think that. I think this kind of drudging up old IPs is a very current thing. And, you never would have thought about something like that back then. I mean, of course they rebooted things, they redid things, but I don't. I think it feels like a lot more prominent or maybe noticeable now. I feel like when they rebooted things in the past, most people wouldn't have even realized that thing existed beforehand.
Right.
Like, now it's like they're deliberately trying to tap into nostalgia rather than, hey, this was a cool idea, no one remembers it, let's do it. And it's like, oh, remember that thing? I bet other people might remember this thing.
Right.
Maybe it's the guy's fault.
Well, it's a very good point. I mean, if you think about it, like I think of like Alec Baldwin's The Shadow movie, right? Or like Billy Zane in The Phantom, right? You kind of knew that they existed. You're like, isn't this like a radio show or something? Or isn't that a comic strip? And then they come out and, it's like, whoa, it's this. But yeah, I mean, nowadays it's like, yeah, didn't they just have a movie of this like 5 years ago and they're rebooting it?
Yeah.
Yeah. But, I make that joke about how could we have predicted it? And I feel like this is like a haunted house episode of Willow, the Whispers of Nockmaar, right?
Yeah, this is full of. I generally feel these tropes that happen in like animated series, but it's like haunted house. Everyone's kind of confronting their past or their demon. They'll bicker and they get separated, and yeah, it's very, very cliche.
And it's funny. It's actually kind of very Doom Patrol, right? Because this happens on Doom Patrol. Yeah. Yeah. So, like you said right here, basically, everyone kind of gets separated, and we find out that Willow, his past is exposed. That he actually did not like disintegrate Bavmorda, but it's like she herself, her own pride, destroyed her. Right?
Yeah, I find it interesting that they perpetuated that that kind of lie about it. Graydon talks about him like, or the scene like it's something that, like story tale that everyone knows. But like, why would they do that? It's just interesting to me. I think it's going to tie into, someone asked Willow, I don't remember who, what really happened to your village? Like why? Assuming like why are you living underground and all that. And I imagine that's going to come in to play later
on. I think that with certain things these days, I think that everything is.
Yeah, you're good now.
Okay, I feel like everything is modeled after other things, and I do feel like these Willow episodes are modeled by or off of the sequel trilogy, right? So I think that like Willow as disgraced hero that kind of has a legend about him is very much like Luke Skywalker in like The Last Jedi,
Yeah. I've even read that Warwick Davis kind of based part of his performance on Mark Hamill's Luke Skywalker from the sequel trilogy. So
right. And so I think that like the writers, I can't vouch for them or speak for them, but I feel like they see something in another story and they're like, okay, well, how do we make this story fit that? And so I think that that's what they did with Willow. That's why it's like this perpetuated lie from the time of the movie, which I don't think we mentioned this at all last episode, but the time in the show, there's a shorter gap of time between the events in the actual story of the Willow world and our world, right? Because like Elora Danan would be just like maybe 5 or 6 years younger than us, whereas I think like the actress is probably like in her early 20s.
Yeah, I kind of get a late teens, early 20s vibe. So I would say it's probably about 20 years when the movie was closer to, oh no, it was 87, right? Or 86?
86.
Yeah, so it's, we'll get on 35. 35?
36.
36 years, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so she would be like a woman, like grown with kids and stuff, not like a young, beautiful girl, right? So, anyway, there is that idea that like he actually did not defeat Bavmorda, and that gets brought out. There's a lot of nostalgia that's milked in this episode. We even see General Kale at one point in this
Yeah,
episode.
no, they show a lot of old scenes from the movie. You see Bavmorda, you see Kale. I mean, I think Kale was newly filmed, but Bavmorda might have actually been from the movie. I know the Willows. You see Willow from the movie because he looks, so much younger.
He does.
And I even think the scene where Elora sees her mother. I think that was actually the footage from the movie as well.
Totally agree. Yes. They did it in such a way that it looked really good too. They did this sort of like magical, wispy, flashbacky thing, and you just get like a little wisp, and then you see a person's face, and the face looked like really solid and tight.
Yeah, I agree. I like the effects in this episode.
Yeah, wispy faces are tight. That's a little. But anyway, you have mentioned here probably the most intriguing aspect of the episode, which is Graydon, who is possessed by the Lich. Thank you so much. Of the Gales. He is like flashing back to his own childhood, and we see that like he had a brother, and I guess he was possessed in the past, right?
Yeah, he's got a bunch of scarring on his chest. You see a reference to he almost hallucinates his father and manifests his disappointment in him. I assume that I mean they actually do it. They show it. They show him pushing his older, probably more physically able brother off a tree branch and like apparently dying or maybe being paralyzed or something, kind of taking away the pride that his father had in him, or destiny that he had set out for him, like probably as his successor. But yeah, it's not his first go around. I'm pretty sure that they had Tony Rivoli play both himself and his brother as younger somehow.
That's what I was thinking. Yeah.
Maybe they de-aged him a little bit or something. I'm not really sure, but the voice sounded exact to me.
Right. Exactly. You mentioned in our last discussion that you just kind of see Flash Thompson, and I feel the same exact way too. With this episode, did that change that at all?
A little bit, yeah. I like when he talks about the spell stuff and all the evil magic knowledge he seems to have. That kind of takes me away from the Flash vibe, sort of. And I think there's a lot of that. That's a focal point of this episode. So
absolutely, yeah.
Yeah, and we got a couple little Evil Dead references here. A possessed guy with weird stuff in his face. We got a book bound in the flesh of a satyr.
Yes, yeah. Doesn't the character kind of go like, ugh, when they say that too?
Yeah.
I think like Kit does that or something. Yeah. So, he's a big focus on the episode, just like you said. But then we do get a lot of like Kit and her kind of going around this castle that belonged to her grandmother. And then we learn about her grandmother's backstory. And were you intrigued by her backstory?
Yeah, no, because it's just like in the, I mean, you've mentioned before this is a sequel novel. I've mentioned that there's a comic adaptation. I don't know if any of those things were touched upon in those things, but she's just an evil sorceress in the movie, sort of.
Mm-hmm.
They don't really give you much why or reason, so they're just really retconning a backstory, a detailed backstory here, and I always appreciate that kind of stuff.
Yes. Honestly, that's kind of the bread and butter of maybe our friendship right there, because like so much of the stuff that we love, it's just they just would like package it in toys. I mean, specifically Transformers, right? Where they just would be like, look at this cool guy. And then like as decades pass, they kind of like make these backstories like, this is why he has this gun. This is why he has this color. This is why he looks like this character. And I feel like Bavmorda is this great example because visually, she's a very interesting character in the Willow movie because she kind of is like a nun. She's got this sort of black habit like a nun would have, but she's got this crown, which is very similar to like Jesus's crown of thorns. And then
Masters of the Universe movie Evelyn vibes too.
Yes. Good point. But the thing is, she definitely like not exactly, but like resembles a nun sort of in her costume, right? And I think that that's interesting because I think that the person that wrote the show, Lawrence Kasdan's son,
Jonathan.
thank you so much. I think he maybe saw that visual and he's like, okay, well, maybe she was actually part of an order that was supposed to be like a good order, and she was corrupted. And you have it right here, the name of the order, right? It's
I think it's the Cult of the Worm, but I may be.
Cult of the Worm. Yes. And the thing is that besides that, there's even more to it. It's that there's like these 6 fays that betrayed this deity, and so they were kind of cursed. So it's got this sort of like Lucifer and God kind of idea behind it already too.
Yeah, and that's that's some typical fantasy stuff, I think. But I am finding it interesting.
Yeah. I mean, but with typical fantasy stuff, the most generic, lame version of it is just when they're like, "There's this evil, and it's this," and it's like very basic, right? In this, I think they're adding these little details to it, which makes it seem more realistic.
Yeah, no, they're saying that there are these magical creatures. They betrayed the Great Mother, and then their bloodline is what is the root of this evil. And I think it's taking the myth and melding it with their reality. So it's not just like, oh, there's an evil presence and whatever, but it's like, oh no, these evil things actually like had kids or something, and they have their blood, and it's like this evil dynasty.
Yeah. And the thing is that dynasty continues to this day with Kit and then her mother Sorsha. They are descendants of Bavmorda, and that makes Kit more of an interesting character. I know that, like in our last discussion last week, you were kind of saying, well, she is going to be flawed and unlikable because we have to see her sort of become a likable character. But I think that like 4 episodes in, she's still just sort of like, just being cynical of everything and just commenting on it. I was like, all right, come on, like let's have a little bit more here. I think this episode finally added a little bit more depth.
Yeah, she's finally turning the page there, especially with the scene where she's kind of encouraging Alora. She's saying like, I saw the bush you made with the tree in the forest, and it was beautiful. Like encouraging her, and that's what is ultimately going to happen. Is to me they're the 2 leads of the show. It's Kate and Alora. And then Willow is kind of like a legacy character to support them, but they're the power players, I suppose, in the story, I guess.
Right, and then do you see where there's that sequel trilogy comparison, right? Because then Alora is essentially like Rey, who's this like super powerful character that didn't realize they're super powerful, and then like Kit is Kylo Ren, who is like the direct descendant of like the Leia type character,
Yep.
So, I mean, it's kind of funny, right? Is that like Sorsha is very much like Leia in the sense that like she is the descendant of like the dark leader character.
Yeah.
Right, Bavmorda and Vader, right? Yeah. So, you mentioned in your notes too that it feels like there was things cut from this episode. There's a lot of plot holes. Why do you think that?
Well, I'm not. I don't want to say plot holes. It's just some
gaps.
I guess they took. So there's a point where Willow kind of dismisses Alora while they're performing the exorcism on Graydon, and then she comes back later on, and then Graydon's just free, and you don't know what happened. Like I wish they would have kind of shown that, and I guess that's to kind of build suspense with the audience, so they don't know that he's possessed. But I mean, it was super obvious he was possessed. Or maybe it's just I'm so used to seeing things like that
exactly.
Right. There was a whole storyline with Borman and trying to open this like door in this castle, this golden door, and there was like it sounded like there was like women whispering to him beyond it, and it never gets addressed what it was, and he never opens it, and I just want to know what the whole point of that was, I guess.
Okay.
And then and then finally, this is kind of like a stupid thing, but in the final scene, in the altar room where they tried to perform the ritual on baby Alora.
Yeah.
Alora like sucks the soul out of Graydon to save him because they couldn't do what they were trying to do. Willow was like screaming like, "No, don't do it!" And this like weird gargoyle thing grabs him. They're all just talking. Nobody goes to help him whatsoever. And then she does the thing. She saves him, cleanses his soul. And it looks like she literally eats this demon soul, which I hope comes back later on. And then he's just free, and he's like, "Oh yeah, great job!" And nobody's like, "You just ate a demon," like or whatever. Like no one addresses it whatsoever, and it's like complete water under the bridge.
Yes. It does feel very abrupt how they go from like that sequence to the end of the episode, which is where we see Eric too. But like, and I want to talk about that in a second too. But one type of character that I've sort of been introduced to in the last, I don't know, 7 years that I didn't know about is the idea of a sin eater. Have you ever heard of one of those?
I don't think I've heard the term, but I can imagine what it is.
Yeah, there's this really weird show called Sleepy Hollow that was on Fox for a while there. It had the guy that Jonathan, the guy who's like Boromir's dad in Lord of the Rings, that actor who's like awesome.
Sean Bean?
Well, no. his father.
Oh, John Noble.
John Noble. Right, he was the voice of Unicron, right? On Beast on Prime.
Oh, anyway, yeah. Yes.
Yeah. So anyway, he on the Sleepy Hollow weird ass show was a sin eater, and I like looked it up, and that's like a thing, like a sin eater, and that's what I was thinking of in this with Allura. Like maybe they're gonna go in that route with her, that like she kind of can take the evil, and that's how she sort of purifies things. She's able to take the evil into herself. I don't know, but I'm really glad that you brought that gargoyle creature because I sort of was taken out of it. Like I was like, what the fuck is this thing? First of all, it looked weird, and it just kind of like grabs Willow. And it looks like it's just like a little person inside of a costume. Yeah. You know, I was like, there doesn't seem to be any kind of creatures in this whole castle. It's just they're sort of people's imagined, like their memories haunting them. And then all of a sudden there's this weird mummy gargoyle kind of creature. You know, it's yeah. So like at the very end, Eric wakes up and I think he's very hot. I mean, not the actor, but like the actor seems like he's very hot.
Yes, yeah.
Yes, that twin action. But like, I tried to kind of figure out what I was looking at in that scene. Like, was there anything significant about where he was besides the fact that he was like in this big ruined city?
I imagine that's supposed to be the immemorial city. And I think, we talked. They kind of gave us that mythos dump at the end there about Morda and the fairies and the cults and all that. And they're kind of hinting at, or trying to ask the question, like, why did they kidnap him? Like, what are they going to do? Like, what are they going to use him for? Or what do you use his blood for? And you're frozen. So I'm going to wait a second. Nope. Oh, man, we almost did it. We almost made it through the whole...
Oh, we're back. What happened?
Yes, cut that out, please. They're starting to pose the question, like, why did they kidnap Eric? What are they going to do with him? What do they need him for? We know that Allura Dannon they're also looking for her. They need to banish her soul. So this is the only thing that can stop the crone. But why did they need Eric?
Yeah. Do you think that next week's episode, the 5th episode, is going to be like focused on him a lot more?
I think we're going to start seeing him pop up more. Yes. And I was surprised about that actually, but I don't know what they're going to do because he seemed like he was alone there, which is the interesting thing. And I don't know if you heard me say it or not, but I'm assuming that's the immemorial city that they keep talking about.
Yes, I did hear that. Yeah. I think you're right too. Yeah. So, that was the very, very last shot before they did like another cover, which was like, it was something from the 90s, right?
Oh,
wasn't it?
Oh,
sorry, duh. Jeez.
I thought that was pretty good, actually.
Yeah, well, is it the same artist like covering all these kind of iconic songs?
That's a great question. Because I mean, every song has been has had female vocals so far.
Right.
I should look that up.
Yeah. I know that was like the very last shot of the episode, but right before that, you see some of the Gales, like 2 of the Gales, looking down at Willow and his crew, and they're like, "Oh, we're gonna jump them," basically.
Yeah.
And one of them, he kind of looks like in Bram Stoker's Dracula, they have an insane asylum where Renfield is kept, and the staff members have these like cages on their heads to keep them safe from the prisoners. He kind of looks like that. And then the other girl just kind of has spiky teeth. I don't know what they're...
She's the one that flies. It's kind of like a harpy sort of thing.
Oh, okay. Yeah, they really like showcased them in that first episode where they were almost like an X-Men team of like mutants attacking them. You know, they all have
Yeah,
their own
and
powers.
we also guessed that we were going to slowly see them appear across the season. They had to defeat them one by one or something.
Yeah,
We'll defeat them 2 by 2.
yeah, yeah. But you know what? Like that's something that even though like comic book films have kind of just dominated fucking media since like at least 2008, maybe or well maybe like 2001, honestly. Um, you know, they haven't had that many times of superpowered teams versus superpowered teams. That's not as common as you'd think.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
And like that's one of the best things about comics is that you know you have like all these five guys have these random powers and these five guys, and I felt like the Gales are like a comic book villain team.
Yeah,
You
totally.
know, yeah, and you know, like I think that one of the best examples of that kind of thing is in Infinity War when you have like the Black Order, like Thanos's people,
Yes, yes.
you know, going after like the Avengers stuff. I really like that. But yeah, so I mean, I think that that's sort of an inspiration for these guys too. But how you feel about the show in general?
I enjoy it. I don't think this was like a mind blowing episode or anything like that, but I enjoyed the backstory of the and I like the show, and I don't know why the internet hates it. I mean, I do know why the internet hates it, but I just don't want that to be the reason why. It's because there's female leads and queer romance. It's just like get over it.
Yes, yes, yes. As you know, I have just one guy that's like the other side from how we normally talk. I'm not going to mention his name, but like he's very cynical about this kind of stuff, and he always thinks that Disney has sort of an agenda. He's the one guy I watch like that. Otherwise, everyone else I watch is pretty liberal minded and forward thinking. Um, but when he talks about this show, it's very interesting to see it because it's like he kind of looks at everything that we see and he's like, oh, well, this is why this is bad. And this is why this is bad. And I think that if you go into these things automatically having cynical thoughts, you're going to be rewarded by, of course, this is the worst thing in the world because look how bad this is. But I think that if you go into it like thinking, well, the world is changing and like we should kind of change our media to make people feel more included, like maybe you know there's a balance, right? Because like there's too much of changing things so that you can fit agendas, but then there is like, yeah, we should change things so that people are more represented.
Yeah, I do think I think what it boils down to is that the people that don't like these things think like, well, why does every show have to have this? Are there that many gay and transgender people here that a group of 5 has to have 2 or 3
Right.
gay people or minorities in them? Like I mean, I guess I'm very clearly a white man. I guess I don't have too many friends of color. I mean, I don't think that I've not sought them out or anything like that. But it's just things happen. So maybe they're just used to their own lives, their own circles, and they don't see that, so they don't want to see it. They want to see just like the whole purpose of representation is that someone can see themselves in the show, and the people that are used to seeing all white people are used to seeing all white people in their lives, and they don't want that to change. So,
Right.
I'm sure that there probably is more queer representation in TV than there actually is percentage-wise in America.
Yes.
Fortunately, but who cares? It's entertaining. Like this is a fantasy show. It's gonna be fun. It's got some drama, some intrigue. Just enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah. And one point that this particular guy makes, and which I've mentioned this a whole bunch of times on our show too, that like he gets many views because I think people kind of rally behind this kind of stuff. One point he makes frequently is that like the women are very capable and the men are sort of oafish or incompetent. And the thing is, I work in education, right? And so I'm one man of amongst like many women. You know, I'm like part of the like 5% of men that work in my field or in my district, right? And so I work with a lot of women that are more competent than I am, that like are more physically aggressive than I am, you know, if they have to be in a physical situation. So it's not like this fantasy that's being created. I understand if like everything in media that you see kind of represents this, and I also understand the idea of like making male characters kind of seem incompetent, making the female character like if you automatically just do that, that is bad storytelling. Like I feel like it shouldn't matter your gender. there should be capable characters no matter their gender, their ethnicity, whatever. Like you shouldn't have to shortchange characters to make other characters shine, you know? But to say that like, you know, oh, like a woman wouldn't be as strong or that doesn't fly anymore, you know? You know, in medieval times, maybe it does, but modern times it does not. So, yeah, well, now that we're going to get canceled, we could we can end this episode right here. But I really do appreciate talking about this show with you. I'm trying to think. Will it be Christmas Eve on Friday? No, right? Is it?
No. Christmas Eve Saturday.
Right. So let me ask you this before we end this recording. Do you want to do our sort of best of next episode, you and me together, and then like we'll do 2 Willows and 2 Doom Patrols the next time? Or do you want to do Willow and Doom Patrol next time and do the best of before New Year's? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, I mean, like everything that would be included in the best of is already happened. I don't want to include anything that we haven't finished. So yeah, we could do it either week. Whatever's more convenient for you. I don't mind.
Why don't we do 1 more Willow and 1 more Doom Patrol since you know it's not New Year's yet, and then the next week we'll do like a best of 2022 that we've covered.
Yeah, sounds good.
Cool, man. Oh, well, thank you so much for doing this with me, guys. If you have not subscribed to Comic Books Transform, please do. Me and Brian are pretty charming middle-aged men, and you know, if you like this video, that will make me have an early Christmas present. But until then, we'll be back next week to talk about Willow episode 5 and Doom Patrol episode 4. See y'all.